let's discuss Richard Aceves and his episode, and then particularly around low energy mood management and that experience that so many CrossFitters have. So my first question then, Rachel, is how do so many athletes reach this point where they have low energy and their mood is low and it's kind of a normal thing within CrossFit?
Yeah. Yeah, let's describe that state even in more depth
Mm,
here. So many of us show up at the gym completely demotivated. Like we've arrived and we're, physically body is there, but mind is not there. Um, Often there is accompanying injury and illness, a lot of complaining, even if it's just internal. I'm not going to be able to do this. I feel like crap. Um, yeah, like feeling crushed, like you've got hit by a bus regularly. Yeah, let's point out that's not normal or acceptable ways for athletes to show up to their training. So,
mm.
if this describes you, I have a lot of compassion for you because I've been there before. I'm sure that Tom has too.
A few times.
We've made all the same mistakes that everybody else has. So, how do we get to that point? Well, often it's coming from using training to manage mood, but to the degree that we are chasing that like high that we get over listening to our body when it's telling us to rest. So failing to take adequate rest days, failing to take adequate active recovery days, which I know Tom wants to talk about a little bit later in the show. um, when we expect ourselves to be at 100% every single day, then this like sense of like burnout and overwhelm around training is
Mm.
definitely going to happen.
The experience that I know so many athletes will remember for themselves
Mm.
is that feeling of it's taken every ounce of willpower to get myself to the gym. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, how did I manage to do this? And then
Yeah.
I've got to drag myself through a warm up, and you feel slow, you
Yeah.
feel heavy, you
Yeah.
feel like I haven't got the energy to be doing this, and you just feel kind
Mm.
of crappy
So
generally.
negative.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the problem with this is that it's not a nice way to live in the long run. Like it's an awful place to be. And I remember it from my own training. B, it's not going to get you to where you want to be either. Like it's not
Yeah.
going to get you to your competitive goals. You have to get your body working for you, not
Mm.
against you. And
Yeah.
that comes partially from adjusting physical practices and partially from adjusting your mentality behind it too.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you if you're showing up to a class every day completely overwhelmed and negative and thinking I'm never going to be able to learn all of this stuff, would you expect to ace it? Like probably not. Right?
Mm.
You're not learning everything the way that you need to, and your body's the same way.
Yeah. So on this neurochemical baseline, what's happening is cortisol completely jacked up. It's like I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm responding to threat and fear.
Mm. Yeah.
You've got this adrenalized or norepinephrine level kind of spiking of just like, right, that's all I'm running on. And
Yeah.
you're risking that adrenal fatigue, or what's been termed as adrenal fatigue so many times. It's like I'm pushing, I'm pushing, I'm pushing. And then like dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, like all the things that make you feel good, like everything that makes you feel like, oh, I'm happy, content, or I want to
Yeah.
chase something, are just destroyed. Like they are non-existent. So you lose the fun, you
Yeah.
lose the goal chasing aspect of it because I'm having to drag myself there instead of just experiencing it. And
Right.
you lose that feel good factor of, yeah, I'm moving forwards, I'm
Yeah.
improving, kind of, I like, you lose that runner's high type thing that you
Mhm.
often get from CrossFit because you are just crushed. So we need to find a way around that, right?
Yeah. And can we talk a little bit about adrenal fatigue too?
Mm,
A lot of us might not be familiar with that. So adrenal fatigue is when your body fails to like balance your hormones in such a way that you do have those feel good hormones. It's just completely in like shutdown mode. So ways that this shows up is a like weight loss. So inability to like have an appetite or um metabolize nutrients. It'll also show up as low sex drive, disrupted sleep, and extreme mood swings are the main symptoms that you'll see. So if you hear yourself described in there, I want you to know what's going on or what potentially is going on
yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. It's what could be going on, and it's worth investigating further. And I know there's some conflicting evidence around what exactly is adrenal fatigue, but we can all agree on the fact that if you are crushing your body day in, day out, and your mind, then your brain is not going to be in homeostasis and that balance point. Like, oh, all my bodily like neurochemicals are in the right place. Like, they're not going to be at the right level.
Yeah.
So, what do we do about this, Rachel? When you're working with an athlete who is feeling this low energy, low mood, where are you starting with this?
Well, first we want to understand why they're training the way that they are.
Right.
What's the purpose behind training 6 days a week, twice a day? Like, what's the reason? And we go further than that too. It's not just, well, I have competitive goals. We want to have a solid understanding of why those competitive goals or body composition goals are important to us. Like, what's the underlying reason that an athlete finds those things important? To some extent, it's fulfilling some need of ours. And that need might be a serving need, like I'm fulfilling my purpose in some way by pursuing my athletic goals. But it can also be non serving. It could
Mm,
be I'm trying to prove my worth through these athletic goals. And fulfilling our purpose and proving our worth are two very different things. When we're proving our worth, we're looking for an external, extrinsic reward. When we're fulfilling our purpose, it's just for us. We're getting so much fulfillment from it. And so it's a lot easier to tap into motivation. It's also a lot easier to learn how to rest
mm.
when we have that understanding of the long-term view versus short-term. I need to crush every workout.
We can use the idea of social opinion to really help this.
Yeah.
The question I have been asking myself recently is, if no one was watching, what would I be doing? Like, it's the opposite of what Carl Paoli was saying. Of like,
Yes.
if everyone was watching, what would I be doing? And it
Right.
kind of, it serves the same purpose, really. Like, if no one was watching me here, what would I be doing? And
Yeah.
I found out that it wasn't trying to be a competitive CrossFit athlete, because that was me just trying to fit into the box I thought I should be. It was, like training a bit more kind of functional bodybuilding style, still doing CrossFit-esque stuff and being pretty aerobic at the same time. Like, that's what makes me feel good. And
Yeah.
that's what is my new favorite word, autotelic. So it is self-driving. You would do
Yes.
it just for the reason of just doing that. Like, it feels so good that it would just be, that's what you'd do if you had the choice.
Yeah.
And that's really when we dig into our why and who do you want to be. We want to find something that's autotelic, something that has no other reason other than the completion of that task.
Yes. Great.
So we dig into our why. We figure out, when we ask why so many times, we figure out, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who is it that you want to be at the heart of this? And I always thought it was, oh, I want to be this tough macho guy who is able to do everything and is super super resilient, and um yeah, and just like absolutely hard as nails.
And people would look at you that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the
It
thing.
was
Yeah,
about how other people would view
yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah. Because don't tell anyone this, Rachel, because what's happened is we're scared of what's going on the inside, and we don't want to see that inadequacy showing up. So that's, I hope you keep that between you and I and the listeners. Yeah.
Don't tell anyone, guys.
So yeah, we need to understand, okay, what are we trying to get towards? Like, who do we really want to be, and what would be autotelic if we could do it without anyone else seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've worked with several athletes on this, especially competitors, and it's so interesting the things that come back. Often, um, the idea of showing to, and I think this is along the lines of what Richard is really inspired by, which is showing people that they can do anything can be
Mm,
really motivational. That's very altruistic and lovely. Some people's purposes are a lot more self-based. For example, it may be something like, I want to see what I can do. I want to maximize my potential and know that I gave everything to my
mm,
sport before it was time for me to retire. Both of those sides of the spectrum of purpose are beautiful expressions of fulfillment. It doesn't have to be for other people.
Yeah, mindset is a one size fits one event.
Absolutely.
Like, we just because something works for me, it doesn't have to work for you too. And it'd be weird if it did. So whilst there's themes and general principles that apply, like you're an individual human being, and you have like everything that's gone into making you is what's gone into making you. So working on what works for you is the important thing here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Mm.
So we have this idea of, okay, starting with who do you want to be? Like,
Yeah.
what is it that we want to achieve? Why do we want to do it? And really readdressing that fundamental desire there. What is it that's driving you? Getting to know that. And that's going to help massively.
Yeah.
I think the piece from a mindset perspective that I find very useful, and something that honestly I don't do enough, but I know is so important to me, is this active recovery versus passive recovery thing. And truly allowing my mind to recover. We often think of recovery, especially in the fitness community, as if I'm not moving my body, then I must be recovering. So we lie down on the couch, grab our phone, we get the Netflix up, and I'm just laughing at Rachel, just trying to bury her knees deep in her sweat at the moment.
I'm allergic to recovery.
So lots of us are allergic to active recovery, and then we choose passive recovery, which is like, okay, I'm going to lie on the sofa, I'm going to try and do nothing. And we think that if we're physically doing nothing, if our body isn't moving, then we must be recovering. But no, like from what's happening in your brain in that moment, when you're looking at social media, your brain is still working overtime. When you're watching a complex TV series, your brain is still working overtime. It's thinking about the social pressures, it's thinking about how do we fit into this, let alone the blue light and the like and everything that goes along with that.
Yes.
So it's like we choose these things like TV, eating crap because that makes us feel better,
Right.
Netflix, using our phone, alcohol, drugs, like these things kind of, it's like, okay, how can I passively recover? And those things just don't work. In the words of Stephen Kotler and the Flow Genome Project, they're slow and they're inefficient. They do not get you recovering. The other side of this is more active recovery. It takes some effort, some energy, and yoga, mobility, breath work, getting outside in nature, just being still, reading, like these are all,
Meditating. Yeah.
yeah, meditating, exactly right. These are all like exponential in their potential reward for you. And these things just give back and give back and give back. And guess what? If you're too tired to be doing that, you should probably be asleep. And that's maybe the best form of meditation that you can find.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this. This is something that we discussed in a recent programming cycle in the digital mindset gym, was the difference between behaviors that are self-care, which are what you're describing: yoga, meditation, breath work, getting out in nature. That's self-care. And numbing behaviors. Numbing behaviors, and we'll talk about this in next week's show with Anna Lemke. Numbing behaviors allow us to seek dopamine, which gives us a little boost. That's why like eating crappy food feels really good. It's because you get a little dopamine boost, but it's not serving because it's not addressing the issue that you're trying to numb. It's not addressing the burnout that you're experiencing. It's almost like if the only thing that you're looking forward to in your life is your next vacation, your life needs to be adjusted. There should be more to it than just the next vacation. Whereas on the other side, all the stuff that's like yoga, meditation, breath work, cold showers, all that good stuff, those, they take work and they're not fun. Like they're self care. So you kind of think like, oh, like taking a bath, an Epsom salt bath, that sounds like it should be relaxing, but I'm really stressed out thinking about doing it. That's okay. That's why it's active recovery. It takes a little bit of energy to make ourselves do it, but it's much more effective than turning to those numbing behaviors.
It's like you've got to be constantly asking yourself, what's this doing to my mind? What's
Yeah.
it doing to my body?
Yes.
And when we know, this is why education is such an important part of this, because the more we know, the more seeps into our subconscious awareness of like, this isn't what I know I really want to do. It's what I'm doing because I practiced it and because it gives me that little dopamine spike.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that when we're turning towards numbing behaviors, it can be really effective. And same with actually turning towards working out more and more and more and hitting that burnout. That's often caused by what we call bound nature as well. So being really aware of the thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and behaviors that are a symptom of a belief system that's not serving us anymore. Being really aware of those will also allow us to turn towards things that are more serving, because we'll know that we're confronting bound nature and rewriting that story.
Yeah. The difficulty of this is something that we'll mention the debrief of Anna Lemke's podcast as well. But it's that semi-conscious state that you slip into when you're about to form. And that is the hardest one to pick up on because you are semi-conscious in it. You're kind of dazed and you're foggy in your perspective. But
Yes.
if you learn to recognize that, that is the greatest indicator that you're about to do something that isn't self-serving.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
So we have first of all digging into the why and why you're doing this and who do you want to become and like really understanding your true motivations. And then we have balancing our active recovery. Like you've got to actively work on your recovery. That's what we need to realize here. And then we have the next piece in my opinion here, which is like providing some positive constraints to your training. Like often Parkinson's law happens in this scenario where it's like, I have X amount of time to train, so I'm going to fill it up. Or I have X amount of time before I need to pick the kids up, or I need to fill this space.
Yeah.
And then your task expands to fill the amount of time allotted. So training becomes bigger and it takes up more time and it takes up more space and it takes more energy. And then the low mood comes back and the kind of the slightly depressive or the slightly depressive mentality around it picks up too. So we need to maybe add some positive constraints, be like the balance of the kind of the symbolic mother and father again. It's like, okay, we need some, this is the limit. We do not overstep this limit because it's in your best interest.
Yeah, it's an internal boundary setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very similar to when we all had to work from home for a little while. What we were coaching a lot of people on during that time is even though you're at home and you have more hours, that doesn't mean that you should be working all of those hours. You have to set office hours, even though you're technically available and you're working in your home or your workspace is where you are all the time now. It's not acceptable to just fill all that time with work. And the same thing applies. Just because we have the time to train for 2 hours doesn't mean that that's actually serving us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Because we start filling up with things that physiologically destroy us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We seem to think on that work piece, we seem to think that, oh, I'm just going to be able to flow through and I'll find this perfect state and it will happen. And I'll just go through. There's a reason why the working day existed and you have set hours because you're more productive when you have constraints. And we need to embody that. And it's like, again, I'm saying this like I've mastered it. I'm going to be working for another hour and a half tonight at least, and it's kind of 6 p.m. So, and I've been working since pretty early. So, like, I fall short of this, but I know that it's a short-term thing, and I'll go back to it in, especially after the Christmas break. So, like, those constraints are important. We need time off.
Yes, 100%. We don't function at our best unless we're resting.
Yeah. So I know you wanted to talk about the value of going through hardship or trauma or injury as a coach. And this is something that I think, like, if you haven't seen the video, I think it's somewhere on Richard's Facebook profile, which is open. There's a video of him having two gigantic screws undone from his inside his hip. It's a horrendous video, but it's a symbol of how dramatic or traumatic his injury was, like how serious it was. And he has been through some huge physiological shifts because of that injury. And you know what? I've never heard him complain about it. I'm sure it's very uncomfortable and very painful still. But this has given him tools, right? So or tools that he wouldn't have gotten without the injury. So why did this stand out to you?
This stood out to me because we work with so many coaches in the coaching certification in the digital mindset gym who they feel almost guilty for being injured. Like they couldn't possibly be setting a good example for their athletes if they're injured, if they're going through a difficult time mentally. There's this sense that they have to hide that and always appear like they have it all together. What I love about Richard is his ability to see that his experience allows him to be more empathetic with his athletes. Having experienced a back injury now for the first time last year, I am so much more capable of working with athletes who are experiencing back pain, because I've been there. And again, like, I'm in my mid 30s. I'd never experienced a back injury before. So it was new to me. And the same thing comes up for me mentally, right? Like, all of athletes who, they feel really angry, and I might have a hard time understanding where their anger is coming from and how to help them address it. When I've been through it, when I've been through frustration in my training, I have actually the experience to not only empathize, but because I've worked myself through it, and that does take time. You don't just get there really quickly, but because I've worked myself through it, I now have the tools to help someone else work through it. Our stories are so much more interesting when we have overcome hardship, and it makes us better coaches.
Gives us connection points. It's shared
Yes.
experience that we can say, hey, I've had some of that. And not in a way to just say, hey, you'll be fine, but in a way of like, I understand you, I hear you, I see you, I can really kind of understand where you're coming from. I hear what's going on here. We seem to, especially as coaches, get caught up in this idea that the image that we give to other people has to be perfect. And
Yeah.
yeah, very
Yeah.
uniform. And like,
It's like your business card. Yeah.
exactly. But there's
Yeah.
a huge difference between being perfect and being professional.
Yes.
We need
100%.
to understand that you can still be professional and have vulnerability.
Yeah.
It like you don't exist in a vacuum, and you're going to experience hardship. And actually, like maybe that hardship is your secret sauce. Is the
Yeah.
thing that's going to
Your
create your
superpower.
success. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What would you recommend to coaches then in light of that?
Mm, view view the hardships that you're facing with the understanding that it's an obstacle to overcome or a challenge for you to either accept or withdraw from. It doesn't have to be a threat to your financial security or reputation. That's about nature speaking. That's story or perfectionism. We're served so much better by viewing each of those hardships that we face as something that we're capable of overcoming. And it might take time, and the path probably isn't going to look the way that we want it to or expected it to, but that's how you know it's your path.
I would like if I was in that situation where I was coaching CrossFit again, I
Mm.
would be mining my past for
Mm.
valuable experiences that at the time I thought were terrible,
Yeah.
and I came up better because of them. So all these
Yeah.
things that happened to me, actually they were happening for me. They were the
Yeah.
things that were supposed to happen because this is the person I was supposed to come, and I couldn't have
Mm.
become this person without them.
Mm. It's such a lovely perspective.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you'd like to add on mood, low energy, like anything that we can put out there?
Yeah, I don't think so. That felt really good.
Okay, so let's wrap up then. As a summary of where we're at, we want to isolate why we're training. Like, what is it that we really want to get from this? And if it was autotelic, what would that look like?
Mm.
We want to be active in our recovery, not relying on passive recovery that's secretly draining us. We want to add some positive constraints to our life. And then if we're a coach as well, like I think this ties in quite nicely as well. It's instead of trying to hide from those things that feel like weaknesses, embracing them.
Mm. Sounds great.
Lovely stuff.